Sunday, Ford Field, 8 wins versus 8 wins. Late window, national spotlight, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo on the call. That setting alone tells you how heavy this moment feels for Detroit. And don't get it twisted, this is not just another game on the schedule. This is the moment when the Detroit Lions look in the mirror and are forced to answer who they really are right now. Inside the building, there's no sugarcoating it, no pretty talk. Expectations were different. This team wasn't supposed to be chasing the division in mid-December, wasn't supposed to be coming off a defensive performance that gave up 40 points, and certainly wasn't supposed to be living with the reality that every remaining game feels like a playoff game. But this is where the Lions' story has always been written, under pressure, at the edge, when everything feels heavy. Right now, more than ever, this game defines narrative, identity, and future. And that's exactly what we're breaking down here. The real state of Detroit, the mistakes, the adjustments, and what's truly at stake in this matchup. If you're a real Lions fan, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me, because now it's time to talk without filters about the Detroit Lions. The Lions know they need this one. Yes, mathematically there are scenarios where Detroit could stumble and still sneak in by winning the final 2, but that is not the mindset. Dan Campbell understands it, the locker room understands it, and the fan base certainly understands it. Losing this game would mean back-to-back losses at home, something that has not happened here in 3 years, and it would come against a Pittsburgh team that is far from soft. The Rams bullied Detroit at the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively, and that still lingers. That film does not disappear on Monday. It stays with you all week, especially when the next opponent prides itself on physical football. What makes this matchup fascinating is that both teams arrive at 8-6 from completely different emotional places. Around the league, the Lions are often talked about as an 8-6 team that still feels dangerous, still feels like it could beat anyone on the right day. The Steelers, on the other hand, are an 8-6 team that keeps making people ask how they got here. But that perception is shifting fast. Pittsburgh has won 2 in a row. They are playing with confidence, and the noise around them has changed. No fire Tomlin chants, no panic, just a group that believes it is starting to figure itself out at the right time. Detroit sees that on tape. They see a Steelers team that has quietly adjusted its identity mid-season. Defensively, Pittsburgh initially tried to live in single high looks, trusting corners like Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey to survive on islands. That plan didn't hold. They were getting shredded. The adjustment came quickly, more two-high safety looks, Ramsey backing off into a safety role, Slay eventually cut, and unexpected contributors stepping up. James Pierre, an undrafted corner, has played solid football. They added help with other defensive backs, and suddenly the secondary looks more stable than it did earlier in the year. That matters when you're facing an offense like Detroit's, especially in a dome. Offensively, the Steelers have also flipped their script. Early in the season, they leaned heavily on heavy personnel packages, trying to impose themselves physically. Over the last couple of weeks, that's changed. More 11 personnel, more spread looks, and a passing game that looks more comfortable. They elevated Marquez Valdes-Scantling from the practice squad, added Adam Thielen, and those moves are not about box score explosions. They're about spacing, timing, and opening things up for everyone else. That has helped Aaron Rodgers settle in and operate with rhythm. Yes, Aaron Rodgers. That alone adds another layer to this game at Ford Field. Detroit fans know that name all too well, and while this is not the same version of Rodgers from years past, the Lions also know what happens when you fail to pressure him. Matthew Stafford just proved how dangerous a veteran quarterback can be when kept clean against this defense. That cannot happen again. The Lions' defensive urgency is obvious, but so is their offensive need to rediscover balance. Jahmyr Gibbs has averaged just over 3 yards per carry across the last 3 games. That's not who this offense is supposed to be. David Montgomery remains one of the most reliable physical runners in the league, and this team is at its best when the run game creates manageable downs. Too many third and long situations have crept into the offense lately, and without the margin for error they once had, those situations have stalled drives. There is also a clear trench storyline. Aiden Hutchinson is set up for a massive role in this game. Pittsburgh is dealing with serious injuries at left tackle, forcing a fourth-string option into action. The Steelers will help him with chips and protection slides, but Hutchinson thrives in these moments. This is where game wreckers announce themselves, and Detroit needs that disruption desperately. On the other side, the Lions' offensive line must prove it can reassert itself after being pushed around by the Rams. Physicality is not optional this week. It is the entire game. Everything about Sunday points to urgency. The Lions are still one of the highest scoring offenses in football. They put up over 30 points even in a loss to a strong Rams team. The talent is still there, but the comfort is gone. This is December football with consequences against a Steelers team that believes it is peaking while Detroit is searching for stability. This game will reveal a lot about the Lions' identity. Are they the team that responds after being punched, or the team that keeps searching for answers? From the energy in the building to the way they start the game, especially on the ground and up front, everything will matter. So as you look at this matchup, knowing what's at stake and how thin the margin has become, do you believe this is the moment where the Lions reassert who they are? Or does this game expose something deeper that still hasn't been fixed? What makes this moment even heavier is that Detroit is no longer chasing surprise. They are carrying expectations, and expectations change how losses feel. Earlier in the season, mistakes could be explained away as growth. Now, every flaw feels amplified. The secondary is banged up. Communication has slipped at critical moments, and the pass rush has not consistently closed games the way it did at its peak. Against Pittsburgh, those weaknesses are not theoretical. They are pressure points the Steelers will absolutely test. Look at how this Steelers offense wants to operate when it feels comfortable. Balance is everything. When the run game forces linebackers to hesitate, when play action slows down the pass rush, Aaron Rodgers becomes extremely efficient. He does not need explosive plays on every drive. He needs rhythm. He needs third and manageable. And he needs just enough time for routes to develop. Detroit cannot allow that. The Lions saw what happens when a veteran quarterback controls tempo last week, and that memory should be uncomfortable. The goal has to be disruption early. Hits, pressure, forcing throws before routes are fully formed. If Rodgers settles in, Ford Field can get quiet fast. At the same time, Detroit's offense has its own responsibility to help the defense. Long, physical drives matter. Sustained possessions matter. This is where the identity Dan Campbell talks about gets tested. Running the football is not just about yards per carry. It's about wearing on a defense, keeping your own defense fresh, and controlling the emotional flow of the game. When the Lions are at their best, you feel them leaning on opponents. Lately, that feeling has faded. Too many drives have relied on precision instead of force. Against a Steelers team that wants to hit and drag games into the mud, finesse alone will not win. There is also the emotional edge of Ford Field itself. This crowd understands the stakes. They know the standings. They know what a loss does to the margin for error. Early success can turn that building into a weapon. Early struggles can flip the tension the other way. The Lions cannot afford a slow start. This is not a game where you can feel things out for a quarter. Pittsburgh is too comfortable playing from structure. Detroit needs to dictate. And then there's the psychological side. For years, the Lions were the team other franchises circled as a get-right game. That has changed. But sustaining respect in the NFL requires proving it over and over again. This matchup is about credibility as much as it is about record. Beating a confident, physical Steelers team in December sends a message to the locker room and the league. Losing at home, again, sends a very different one. The Lions still control their story. That's the reality. Nothing has been taken away yet, but control only matters if it's used. This is the kind of game that defines how a season is remembered. Not because it's flashy, but because it forces a team to answer hard questions under pressure. Can Detroit impose its will again? Can it protect its quarterback, rediscover its run game, and play disciplined defense when everything is on the line? This is not about style points. It's about survival, belief, and identity. And when this game is over, we're going to have a much clearer picture of what this Lions team truly is heading into the final stretch. Because even after everything we've laid out, there's still one layer that hasn't been fully confronted, and it's the one that tends to define seasons like this. Trust. Not just trust between players, but trust in the structure when things get uncomfortable. That's where Detroit has wobbled lately. You've seen it on defense when assignments start to blur, when players try to do too much, when a missed tackle turns into a busted coverage because someone left their responsibility to fix someone else's mistake. That's not about talent. That's about belief in the system holding up under stress. Against Pittsburgh, that stress is constant. The Steelers are not flashy, but they are relentless. They force you to execute the boring things correctly over and over again. Gap discipline, proper leverage, finishing tackles, playing the call exactly as designed. Detroit has shown this season that when they stay disciplined, they can overwhelm teams. But when they start freelancing, cracks appear quickly. This game will punish that. Offensively, the same theme applies. Jared Goff does his best work when the offense stays on schedule. When the run game is respected, when play action is a real threat, and when protections are clean, he is decisive and efficient. When the offense becomes pass-heavy out of necessity instead of choice, defenses tee off. Pittsburgh's front is young in spots, but it is coached to take advantage of predictability. That makes early down success even more critical. This is not a game where Detroit can afford to abandon the run after a couple of short gains. Patience is part of the plan. There's also the broader picture hanging over all of this. The Lions are not just fighting for a single win. They are fighting for momentum, for belief heading into the final weeks, and for a sense that last season's rise was not a one-year emotional peak. Teams that matter in January know who they are by now. They may not be perfect, but they have a core they can lean on. Detroit is being asked, right now, to show that core again. That's why Sunday matters so much beyond the standings. Win this game, and the conversation shifts. The Lions look like a team that absorbed the punch, corrected course, and responded when the pressure peaked. Lose it, and every question gets louder. Questions about the defense. Questions about consistency. Questions about whether this group can close when the margins disappear. This is December football. There are no easy answers anymore. Just execution, toughness, and clarity. The Lions still have all three available to them. What happens next is about whether they choose to fully lean into them when it matters most. There's also a reality that fans don't always like to talk about, but it sits underneath everything right now. The margin for error is gone. Detroit doesn't have the luxury of almost games anymore. Almost stopping the run. Almost getting pressure. Almost sustaining drives. Those were survivable earlier in the year. In this stretch, they turn into seasons slipping away quietly. That's why the details matter so much in this matchup, and why this game feels heavier than just another 8-6 versus 8-6 meeting. Special teams, field position, and situational football are all going to be part of this whether people want to admit it or not. Against a team like Pittsburgh, hidden yards add up. A short field given away by a penalty. A missed tackle on a return. A drive stalled because of a false start. These are the moments that tilt games when both teams are built to grind. Detroit has to be cleaner. Not perfect, but sharper than they've been. And then there's the coaching chess match. Dan Campbell has never been shy about who he is. Aggressive, emotional, willing to take risks. That identity helped build this team. But in games like this, timing matters as much as courage. Knowing when to push and when to take the points is part of maturity. Pittsburgh is comfortable letting opponents beat themselves. They've lived off it for years. Detroit can't give them that gift. You can feel how this season is hanging in the balance because of how familiar the story feels. Lions fans have lived through years where December arrived and hope quietly faded. This group was supposed to be different, and in many ways, it still is. The talent level is higher. The belief is stronger. The standard is no longer just competitiveness. It's expectation. That's progress. But progress only counts if it's backed up when the pressure peaks. Sunday is about answering a simple but uncomfortable question. When the path narrows, does this team get sharper or tighter? Do they trust what got them here, or do they start second-guessing themselves? That answer won't come from one player or one play. It will show up in how they tackle, how they communicate, how they respond after something goes wrong. The Lions don't need to reinvent themselves to win this game. They need to remember who they are at their best. Physical, disciplined, relentless, connected. That version of this team can beat anyone in this league, including a confident Steelers group coming into Ford Field believing they're built for this moment too. And that's what makes this such a defining stretch. Two teams with very different paths, meeting at the same record, both believing their identity will carry them. One of them will leave Sunday night feeling validated. The other will leave with more questions than answers. One more thing that can't be ignored is how this team responds in real time, not just week to week. We've seen Detroit bounce back before after tough losses, but the difference now is the environment. This isn't a reset game against a struggling opponent. This is a test against a team that is comfortable playing ugly, comfortable playing close, and comfortable winning games that come down to execution late. That's where the Lions still need to prove consistency. Late game moments have become a quiet storyline. Third downs in the fourth quarter. Red zone efficiency when points are at a premium. Defensive stops when everyone in the stadium knows what's coming. These are the snaps that separate good teams from teams that last in January. Detroit has shown flashes of being that team, but flashes are no longer enough. The expectation has shifted, and that's why the pressure feels different. You can sense that this locker room understands it too. The messaging hasn't been panicked, but it's been direct. Accountability, physicality, execution. No excuses about injuries, no talk about bad luck. Just a clear understanding that the standard has to show up on the field, not just in quotes. That's a sign of growth, but growth still has to translate when the lights are on. What's important to remember is that this isn't about one opponent. Pittsburgh just happens to be the team standing in the way right now. This is about whether Detroit can stabilize itself before the season tilts one way or the other. Win this game, and the Lions regain control of their narrative. Lose it, and every remaining week becomes a tightrope with no safety net. That's why this game feels like a checkpoint, not the end of the season, but a moment that tells you which direction it's heading. The Lions still have the talent. They still have the home field energy. They still have leaders who have been through adversity together. What they need now is alignment. 11 players doing their job. coaches trusting the plan, and a team-wide commitment to playing Lions football even when it's uncomfortable. There's a reason this stretch feels heavier than the record alone, and it's because the Lions are no longer being judged on potential. They're being judged on answers. Every team in the league has flaws in December. The ones that survive are the ones that understand exactly how to protect themselves from those flaws. Right now, Detroit is still defining where that protection comes from. You see it in how opponents approach them. Teams are no longer intimidated by the idea of Detroit. They're attacking specific areas, testing communication, testing discipline, testing patience. That's respect of a different kind. It means you're relevant, but relevance comes with responsibility. If you don't respond, the lead keeps pressing until something breaks. This is where leadership shows up without speeches. It shows up in huddles, in corrections between plays, in body language after a mistake. The Lions have leaders on both sides of the ball who have been through rebuilds, heartbreak, and belief swings. This moment asks them to steady the ship, not by doing more, but by doing exactly what's required. No hero ball, no panic adjustments, just clarity. And clarity is what this team has searched for over the last few weeks. At their best, the Lions play fast because everyone knows their role. When doubt creeps in, everything slows down. That half-step hesitation is the difference between a stop and a first down, between pressure and a clean pocket, between a 4-yard run and a drive-stalling loss. Against a team like Pittsburgh, those half-steps get punished. The encouraging part is that Detroit doesn't need external help to fix this. The solutions are already in the building. Better early down execution, cleaner tackling, smarter situational decisions, trusting the run even when it isn't explosive right away, letting the game come to them instead of trying to force a response after one bad series. These are controllable things, and